So if you have a smartphone, raise your left hand. Raise it high. Okay, keep it up. Yeah, the other left. If you have a tablet, raise your right hand. If you don't have a tablet, raise your right hand. Now stretch really big. Hopefully we can make it through this last presentation. I'm going to tell you a story today about four people for whom hopefully, with the use of technology, that they'll be able to realize their dreams. This is a story about Diane, a 42-year-old HIV-positive single mother in Malawi who dreams one day that her daughters will be able to have the education that she never got. Or Prak, an 18-year-old Cambodian who, although unemployed, hopes that through his music and his rap and his videos, he'll be able to inspire those around him with his message of equality for all and love. There's Hassan, a 62-year-old camel herder in rural Yemen who hopes one day that he'll be able to provide enough camel milk for his entire country and maybe sell it in the export market. Or Maria, a 23-year-old employee of the local city hall in her rural Bolivian city. This is a story of technology and what's happening now and what might be able to happen in the future in these developing countries. Now, technology isn't a solution for anything. For all of you who have smartphones, once by virtue of having had that smartphone, did your blood pressure drop immediately because you had an app that told you what foods to eat and how to exercise? No, nor did your stock portfolio triple in size because you were able to do some magic on your phone and figure out what to buy and what to sell behind the scenes. Technology is never a solution. It's only an amplifier or an agitator. So what's happening now in the developing world? And when we think of the developing world, sometimes images of poor farmers come to our minds, or bags of rice, or conflict, or things in those far-off places that we've never heard of. Who knows where Bujumbura is? That's kind of a random place. But the developing world, and some of you smile. Good, I'm glad we're in a good populace here. But the developing world is as vibrant as our society, or our culture here in the United States. You know, Africa isn't just a country, it's 54 countries that's vibrant and has hundreds of languages and cultures and hopes and wishes and aspirations as well. When we think about what technology is doing for the developing world, the story, of course, is connectivity. People are getting more access to more information, right? The UN says that there are almost 7 billion mobile phone accounts. That's almost one per person. They also say that almost 31% of the developing world can access the internet. Kind of low, but we're working on it. And that 89% of the developing world has access to a mobile phone. That's phenomenal if you think about what people can now do. But again, that mobile phone isn't the solution. It's merely a tool. You know, we're seeing amazing innovations. There's things like M-Pesa in Kenya that allows people to transact via their mobile phone, so I can send my cousin across the country 50 shillings just with my mobile phone without having to go to the bank. Or I can save some money so that I'm not keeping it under a mattress on my mobile phone. There's things like SIM-embedded devices. So your SIM card that's on your mobile phone can actually be put into more expensive devices, like solar lamps, for example, that over the course of time you can slowly pay off. If you don't pay your bill, then the provider can cut your lamp off. But it gives you an access to have maybe more expensive assets that you wouldn't have had normally. What's happening in technology now in the developing world is kind of exciting. It's good, but there's also a not so good part. We're seeing in a number of countries where the people with power are taking away people's access to see certain sites because there might be something they don't want on those sites, right? We're seeing in places like China where the search term big yellow duck, which is now kind of connotes an image that is now associated with Tiananmen Square, is blocked from the internet because of that sensitive subject. In Syria, the government was able to trick people into forgetting their security protocols and was able to get into their Facebook accounts, thereby knowing who their friends were and where they were going to be protesting offline. They were able to then go there and wait for them. So it can be pretty scary. Your cell phone isn't very secure. Now, if you're not doing anything where you need to be secure, you're fine. But just by the nature of how the mobile phone was built, it's very insecure. So when you're thinking about transacting sensitive and secure data that you don't want anybody else to have, we have to be very careful. Now, what's going to happen in the future? So let's talk about the not-so-good future. The not-so-good future is that this tyranny of information continues where you can't access the information that you want. But you're okay with that because of clientelism, where those with power are able to pay to make sure you have clean streets, or your children can get a good education, you might be able to go abroad to study. It's not anything whereas in mass where people are upset about. There's continued use of illicit networks like cartels or human trafficking networks to use the internet to their advantage and to precisely improve their crimes that they do. Think about cyber war, where with the click of a button, an entire country's electric grid or internet grid could be taken completely offline, effectively rupturing their system. That's a possibility if you think about the not-so-good future. But there's also the so-good future, the really good future. Imagine a world where information is perfect, it's pure, it's priceless because it has no price, because it's free. You need information, you want information, you got it. You want to know what the price or what the soccer score is in some country, you got it. You want to know what the lottery score is in New York, you live in Haiti, you got it. You're able to also transact on that information. There's a lot of that's going to happen. And honestly, I can't tell you what the future is going to be, what devices are going to be. 30 years ago, if people who predicted 30 years ago what the future would look like were true, I would already have a flying car in my house. Do any of you have flying cars in your house? But that's okay if we don't know exactly what the future is going to be. I have some suggestions, 4 suggestions, about maybe what we can think about, or what I think about in my work when thinking about the future of technology in the developing world and how to get there. It's certainly not a straight line. So ideas about getting the information, about keeping it, about joining it, and then living the information. So when I say get information, what does that mean? So what are the devices that people in the future are going to have to actually get the information? Is it a piece of paper that's digital that you can fold up nicely and put it in your back pocket? Maybe. Who knows? What's exciting is that the devices, as well as the applications and the content that will be developed for people all over the world, will most likely be context-specific. So a lot of times we can't take a system and copy and paste it and to put it in to another place, one for one. We need to make sure everything is contextualized. And so a lot of what we think about in terms of getting information is making sure there's an ecosystem created so that people in the local context can have the tools, trainings, and tips that they need in order to solve their own perceived problems. So instead of just jumping in with a project as a Westerner, create this ecosystem so people can generate. We're seeing a lot of this happen, this innovation labs popping up around the world. In Kenya, there's the iHub, there's iLab Liberia. Now, Liberia is a very poor and very resource-poor country, well, poorly used country, and Kenya is the tech Silicon Valley of Africa. So at the iHub, you have the ability for people to go in with their ideas and get seed funding, get capital risk funding, and kind of take a chance and see what's happening. In Liberia, where the skills aren't so high, people are learning simply how to use the internet and how to form groups to better demand, potentially, eventually, accountability from their governments. And imagine, right now, we have the ability for people like Diane, the mother in Malawi, to get information on her cell phone and to figure out when, and text messages to find her, to know when to take her antiretrovirals. That's phenomenal. Prak in Cambodian, the aspiring star, can post his videos, although low quality, on the internet so that his friends and family can see. Hassan can call up to see if there's any new techniques on breeding camels. And Maria, the city worker in Bolivia, can stream the social media to see what sentiment is happening. Imagine if the future were such that that her daughters could go to a physical school and have digital walls and sit virtually next to students from Kazakhstan, Croatia, and Canada while they're all learning Chinese. Her 8-year-old daughter, whose best subject is computer science, could create her own apps in her own time and sell them, maybe becoming a millionaire herself by the time she's 20. Hassan, the camel herder, can maybe know in real time where all the products of his production chain are, where the camel cheese is, where the camel ice cream is, yum, where the camel milk is, and while virtually on Sundays being able to lead a virtual meeting of the International Camel Herders Association, simultaneously translated into 85 languages. Prak, the Cambodian rapper, can have a simultaneous jam session with people from Hollywood and Bollywood of India, Nollywood of Nigeria, and his newly created Mollywood. That's all certainly theoretically possible, and that technology isn't so far away. But understanding how we get that information and how to contextualize it is the key. The next is, how do we keep the information? This is about the legal and regulatory framework, or legal and regulatory environment. That sounds very lawyerly, and I'm not a lawyer, thank you. It's about how can we make sure to maintain access to that information, whether it's internet freedom or whether it's access to media, so that a system has pluralistic and independent media, for example. So in the case of Hassan, if in Yemen there aren't, his product will be able to do quite well if that legal and regulatory environment is there such that people can find information about his product as well as transact upon that information, whether it's buying via e-commerce or whatever that might be. The next is the join information. So data is simply zeros and ones at the end of the day. But those zeros and ones are really confusing. Now, I don't know what they say. So when we're thinking about how this future of information in the developing world will be, we have to remember about taking that data and curating that data into information, and then taking that information and brokering it into knowledge, and then taking the knowledge and making it actionable so that something can actually happen. But in order to do that, we have to be data literate. We can't be stooped by statistics or just believe what everybody says. So just because the government is opening up a whole bunch of data and putting it there out for the world to see, how can civil society organizations, for example, take that data, mash it up effectively, and make society better at the end of the day? And then at the same time, the government, it's a two-way street. The government can then take suggestions and improve services accordingly. Prat in Cambodia, for example, how can he make sure to be able to analyze that information properly so he knows who's watching his videos, so he can maybe tweak what he's doing or what might needs to be done? And the last is live information. I'm pretty sure in the next couple of days or years, there's going to be a new 12-step program. It's going to be called Infoholics Anonymous. And I might need to be a founding member. No, maybe I'm not that bad, but it's in our lives. This information is always around us. Everywhere we go, we have our smartphones and we want to see what's happening. Well, think about that and what will happen when that information is ubiquitous, plus or minus, around the world. And how crucial it is that we strike a balance between our digital and our physical lives. So that Diane, for example, knows what her children are doing using their technology and feels completely comfortable turning it off when need be. So these are 4 examples of individuals living in the developing world, certainly illustrative, and they represent billions of other people. But hopefully, when we think about how the technology will grow and that we don't hamper or stymie that growth and that innovation, and that we're able to put well thought out parameters around how that works so that information can become free and transparent. Hopefully, in the future, the term developing country will only be a historical term that won't exist anymore, as technology is used as a tool to help all those around the world realize their dreams. Thank you very much.